Hi, and welcome to the Tranquil Cottage Knits podcast. My name is Michelle, and I'm your host. You can find me on Ravelry as Tranquil Cottage, on Instagram as Tranquil Cottage Knits, and you can find the blog at www.tranquilcottageknits.weebly.com. So, hi, happy Sunday. Today is a day. So it is Sunday, November 26th, 2017. And this is episode number 21. And this is Oliver. I am in the craft studio today, just kind of working and hanging out. Normally I record out in the backyard with the dogs, but today I am in my craft studio with the cats. This is Oliver, also known as Ollie Bear. He very handsome dude. Camera shy, maybe. He is one of my rescues. We got him from a friend of mine. She was at our local high school, well, at the high school she and I went to back in Maryland, with her kids, showing her kids the school, and it's a pretty wide open space, and she said they kept hearing the sounds and found this tiny little fuzzy black kitten sitting under a bush, no other cats in sight. So they scooped him up and had him for a couple of days trying to find a home, and decided to take him to the Humane Society. So as they were getting ready to drive him to the Humane Society, I received a text from her showing me a picture, and my response was, "Oh, how awesome, you got the kids a kitten." And she says, "No, we found it, taken it to the Humane Society." And I had shown Justin, my husband, the picture, and he was like, "No, she's not." And literally, it was Labor Day 2014, 1 week before our wedding, and my husband and I were driving the 2.5 hours to Maryland to go pick him up. And he has been a member of our family ever since. That's our Ollie Bear. Oliver, he's got so many nicknames. Bear Bear, that's probably the most popular one, is Bear Bear. He's such a good kitty. And I also have George in here. George may make an appearance. George and Oliver look kind of similar, except George has more white on him. Hey Bear Bear, when we had gotten Oliver, we had him for a few months and realized he didn't have enough attention, of companionship, because we were working during the day, and we would come home and he would just be so frantic. Like, he would attack our feet. He would go berserk, and it was more than just normal kitten energy. He didn't have anything to do all day, so he just took it out on us at night. So Valentine's Day 2015, we had stopped at our local Petco to get Ollie a treat for Valentine's Day. And when we did that, I always walk in and say hi to all the other critters who are up for adoption and wish them well, and give them attention if they haven't gotten any, because the more animals are socialized, the more adoptable they become. So I always make it a practice to stop and say hi and pet them and talk to them. And so I noticed that George wasn't getting much attention. And so I asked the volunteer who was working for the Humane Society there, if he had anybody pay attention to him. And she said no. So I said, well, I'll give him a few minutes. And when she opened the cage, he leapt at me. And he took his front paws and he wrapped them around my neck. And he was holding on for dear life, and the rest of his body was just kind of dangling down. And he was rubbing his face into mine so hard. I was in love. I walked back out. Now, my husband and I had Valentine's Day plans that day. We were on our way, I think, to Winchester. A whole bunch of plans. All these things we were going to accomplish that day. And I walk over to the door, and I'm waving him in frantically, like, come on, come here. And I think I have a sneeze. I've had yucky sinus headache all day long, so I'm sorry if I'm a little sneezy. So I waved him in and showed him George when he came in, and my husband looks at me, darling that he is, and says, "Is this what you want for Valentine's Day?" Of course it was. And so we took George home that day as a companion for Ollie, because Ollie was so overrun with energy. He just needed a playmate. And it helped Oliver so much. Of course, they hated each other for the first 2 months. Hate being an understatement. Absolutely loathed each other for the first 2 months. But that's because Oliver had been an only child and was quite spoiled. He does not take to new situations very well at all. Trips to the vet are crazy. And as a matter of fact, when we moved to the new house, now we're going to argue. When we moved to the new house, I brought him in his carrier. He cried in the car. Brought him in his carrier up to the bedroom so I could just kind of keep them quarantined for a little while, let them get used to the house slowly. And we were also moving furniture in, so we had the doors open downstairs. So I let him loose upstairs in the bedroom, and he literally was in such a panic that he was, no pun intended, completely catatonic. He just laid there on his side, stiff as a board, like a corpse, like a little furry kitty corpse, except he was warm. You could move him, reposition his body, and he would just lay there stiff as could be. And it took him, I want to say it took him like 2 days to actually get up and eat and move around. He gets so traumatized by new things. Bear, you're such a weirdo. But George doesn't care. George is so laid back, it's not even funny. George is also kind of ridiculous. He's the one who will sleep on your face. So, enough about kitties. Let's get to some knitting. Knitting. I have really kind of been impressing myself. Sorry, hit the table. The Trickle Cottage Knits Christmas Gift Along, which is hashtag TCK Christmas Gift Along. Full swing, even though there's like an entirely 2 participants and I'm one of them. Yay! Is what it is. I had the Ruby Cashmere Cabled Toque as my first project. And I was really excited to do that. It is for a friend of mine for Christmas, and he doesn't watch the podcast, so I'm not worried about him seeing it. But this is it, and I love it. He's outside a lot, and I think it will be absolutely warm and lovely for him. Just, it's so cute. I would wear it folded up, but it is meant to be worn just like this. It'll cover his ears when he's outside, and hopefully he will absolutely be thrilled with it. The yarn that I used is it's pretty squishy, but I don't want to say not impressive, because that just sounds so harsh, and I don't mean it that way. But this is the Knitting Boutique. I want to say it's their Potomac base. Let's see if I have. Of course I don't. I believe it is their Potomac base, but it's the one that is I believe merino, camel, and silk, I think. But it is very nice. It is very squishy. But it's about as soft as a normal alpaca. It has, I don't know if you can see this, but it does have a little bit more of a halo. Yeah, you can see the halo there. There's a little bit more of a halo. But I'm not really worried about it felting because it's a hat. It's not like it's a sweater where it would have the rubbing under the arms or anything like that. But it is lovely, and the stitch definition is quite nice. And so I'm very happy with it. But that was first Christmas gift done and down. I was so excited. The next Christmas gift that I have been working on is well, I'm trying to go through my head and see who watches the podcast and who doesn't. I am pretty safe with everything I'm talking about today because it's just pretty much friends. So I have been working on the architecture scarf, and it is getting longer and longer. So I am really thrilled with the progress. The yarn is Cloudborn Highland Fingering from Craftsy, and I got this as a kit, but I absolutely love it. I love the crunchy springiness of the yarn. The pattern is glorious. I know it's funny. I talk about this every time that I do the podcast because it's a progress thing. Let's see if I can do it. There you go. There's the picture. So I update you guys on the progress of this sucker every time, like every week. And I talk about the pattern every week where I got it, and I'm thinking you guys are probably sick of hearing about this scarf. But it is going to be back to being one of my priorities to knit. So, not that it hasn't been, but I've just been knitting other things as well, like the Ruby Cashmere Cable Tote, which is done, and how about my, ready for this one? The Land of Sweets cowl. Isn't that pretty? Oops. I'm like, I know I didn't end it in pink. There we go. So it is done with a Cloudborn twist fingering mini set, and that is where, let's see, that is where this green, blue, purple, eggplant, and dark gray come in. That's where they all come from. And then this is Miss Bab's cashmere. What is her cashmere line? Sojourn. Miss Bab's Sojourn and Oyster. And this is Blue Sky Alpaca. Alpaca Silk in hot pink. I don't know that there's a color name for that. And this is JoJo Land Remembrance held double. And that is alpaca lace cashmere and lace weight alpaca, cashmere, silk, and merino maybe? It's so squishy. And this literally just came off the needles tonight, so it has not been blocked or washed or spritzed or sprayed or anything. But that is it. That is my Land of Sweets cowl. My sister-in-law, who is completely and utterly awesome, helped me pick out the colors for this. I was looking at and loving all of these colors, and all pastel-y, and she's right. Because I asked my husband, and he was just like, they're colors, babe. They're all girly. So that's why I reached out to Jen, and she was like, the pastels are just Eastery. She's absolutely right. So I am super stoked about these colors all put together. So that is the Land of Sweets cowl by Helen Stewart, and it is a pattern available for the 2017 Knit Vent. If you don't join Knit Vent, or if it's not something you participate in, you should. It is wonderful. It is very, very economical. You get five knitting patterns. It's a very small price. And they're small patterns, and they make lovely gifts for Christmas. Hush it, guys. Um, so I could not be happier with this. Again, the name of it just went out of my head. The Land of Sweets Cow, again by Helen Stewart for Curious Handmade, and it is lovely and wonderful. So, next up, showed that. I showed the scarf. When I was unpacking some things for the cabinets and stuff, I'm trying to slowly move my stash into this room. I found a sweater that I had cast on a very long time ago and have not knit on since. And so the pattern is the buttercup. Let's say buttercup. And it is super cute. The yarn is so lovely. And I actually tried it on. I'm going to have to do an edging, a trim to bring in. God, they scared me. I'm actually going to have to, guys, chill. I'm going to have to bring in the neckline a little bit, which I'm fine with. Just kind of strengthen it up. But I had gotten down to kind of the bottom of my bust with it, and I don't know what was going on, if we moved, or I am really not sure. But I somehow just completely stopped working on this, and I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of years, but I had no idea where it was, and I ended up finding it in one of the boxes I unpacked. And the yarn is Jaeger, Roma, and the colorway is SH010 Leaf. I think George wants to come visit us. And I actually got this yarn in a D-stash, and it's kind of funny how that happened. My LYS, which was Fibre Space when I was living in Maryland, Fibre Space in Alexandria, if you have not been, go. It is lovely. The people are lovely. Danielle is lovely. Hi, Georgie. The people are lovely. Danielle is lovely. And they just have such a great selection. And you say hi, George? Yeah. They have such a great selection, and just anything I could want or need, I always find there. And I love them to bits. Okay. So, he's my big baby, can you tell? Put your litter box paw on my face. There you go. This is George. My big boy, my baby. So, if you have not been to Fibre Space, absolutely check them out. They're really wonderful, and they carry so much yarn. All the brands that I absolutely love, they've got them. They've also been a wonderful resource for getting to experience brands that I have not been familiar with. That's how I became introduced to Jill Draper Makes stuff. Who else? Oh, tons of different bag makers. They carry chicken boots. I love chicken boots bags, don't I? And so there were so many things that I've just become familiar with. Are we done? So many things I've become familiar with because they carry them at Fibre Space. Now I only get out there maybe once a year, maybe twice if I'm lucky. I just don't get to Maryland or Virginia, that Alexandria. I just don't get there that often anymore. But anyway, so Veronica was a... Ooh. Now George is going to shake the table all over the place. So Veronica used to work there, and Veronica is a knitter and a pattern designer, and had worked at Fibre Space. And she was just such a doll. She's George. Go on. You gotta go. You gotta go, buddy. Sorry. So George, Veronica, what is her Ravelry name? Let's look that up, because she's just kind of wonderful. She now works, I believe, for Miss Babs. I know she does all of the shows and things for Miss Babs. And so that's just kind of cool. Let's see if I can find her real quick. Anyway, so she and I knew each other from here, from Fibre Space. And so then she moved and left Fibre Space. And so while I saw some of her patterns and stuff out and about on Ravelry, we just lived far apart and didn't see her anymore. So next thing I know, I'm looking for a sweater quantity of yarn because I wanted to knit Buttercup, and I find this gorgeous yarn in a D-stash. Well, guess who the D-stasher is? D-stash. I'm the D-stashy. She's the D-stasher. Guess who the D-stasher is? Ta-da! And it was just really kind of wonderful to get that yarn from her, and it's very cool. Very small world. George. Very small world. And I recently got to see her at Rhinebeck because she was doing the booth there for Miss Babs. So, I think George wants kibble. Kibble has been distributed. I did look her up. Look up Veronica. She's Golden Iris on Ravelry. And she really is just a lovely, lovely person. So, and a pretty decent pattern designer as well. So, it was just really neat that here's this person that I know who literally moves across the country. And I'm looking for yarn for a sweater, and she happens to be destashing the yarn that I fall in love with. Small world. So that is the sweater, the Buttercup that I just pulled out for you. So I'm going to be putting that back in rotation along with my Slinky Ribs sweater. I think that they're just going to have to wait till the first of the year. Once the Christmas knitting is done, then I'll be moving on to that. So I'm pretty excited about that. Craftiness. I did decide that the Ruby Cashmere Cable Toque that I knit, I really do like it, so I think I'm going to knit another one. I have enough yarn left out of that skein to do it, and I'm not quite sure what else I would do with that small amount of yarn. And so I may end up with 2 of those out of that skein, which would be exciting. And let's see. Trying to think that knitting. I think I'm going to have 2 people now that I'm teaching to knit, which is exciting, and our knitting group is growing. And I think that's all for knitting and spinning. I haven't spun anything this week. Part of it is the side-see stuff I have going on. It is just like all right here. It's just not happy. And you know, when mama's not happy, ain't nobody happy. Oh, I also took a little foray. This is a PG show, I promise you. No, G. It's not PG. It's G. General audiences. Everybody can watch the show, okay? God. Don't mind me. It's 10 o'clock at night, and I am on cold medicine, so whatevs. So I took a foray into the kitchen and made some candied pecans. I love candied pecans. And I don't use that much sugar, so I will use 1 pound of pecans. Um, if you've never done this before, it is super easy and they are amazing. I'll take a pound of pecans, and you take the white of 1 egg and like a teaspoon of water, and you whip it until the eggs are frothy. Once the egg white gets all frothy, then I put a little dash of vanilla in it, whip it again just to incorporate the vanilla, um, and then I toss the pecans in that mixture, or pecans, depending on where you're from. I toss them in that mixture, and then after that I sprinkle them with a mixture of uh, half cup of granulated sugar mixed with a tablespoon of cinnamon and a teaspoon of salt. So they're really not that sweet. They just a little bit of sweetness um, and a little bit of saltiness. And so then I bake them at 275 for an hour, and I stir them every 15 minutes. Just put them on a flat baking sheet. I line it with foil, makes my life easier. You just bake them for an hour at 275 and just stir every 15 minutes or so. And your house will smell amazing. I will take those and chop them and put them in cereal, in yogurt. It's a good way to up the protein level in really anything. They're amazing on oatmeal. Some steel cut oats, a little bit of butter, brown sugar, and chopped pecans. Freaking amazing. And I will also bake a sweet potato and then put a little bit of butter and everything's better with butter, right? Put a little bit of butter and a little sprinkle of brown sugar and some chopped pecans on that. And they're just amazing, and there's so many applications for them. You can top cookies with them, you can top pies with them, just chop them and top. They're amazing on cakes. I don't eat that much of dessert stuff like cakes, pies. I don't eat much of that, but it is such a good use for it. My dessert these days is kind of like a little sweet potato with maybe a little just a little bit of butter and sugar and pecans on it. That's heaven to me. Or even yogurt. Just Noosa. Have you tried Noosa? It's amazing. My favorite is the honey with just a little bit of pecans in it. So good. So I did the chopped pecans. Come on, Jersey, you come back? You can come back? You can come back. And then the other thing I did was we had a pork roast for dinner one night, and of course we had leftovers. So I took the cold pork roast out, chopped it up really thin, which you can do because it's cold. It won't obviously chop really thin or shred really thin when it's hot. But so I did that when it was cold, tossed it with a little bit of barbecue sauce, and made pulled pork sandwiches, or shaved pork sandwiches, however you want to look at it, for dinner. And with that, I didn't have any sides. I didn't have anything really to go with it. So I had Brussels sprouts. Growing up, I hated Brussels sprouts. Hated them. My mom used to make me eat them, and I would put the whole thing in my mouth and try to chug milk after it and get it down whole because I could not stand the flavor. Hi, Georgie, welcome back. Now, well, I shouldn't say now. This week, I'm craving them like crazy. What's wrong with me? Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, so hi, baby. So I had gotten a bag at the grocery store, and I had taken just about maybe a dozen of them and chopped them in half, and you just basically chop them in half, you toss them in olive oil, chop them in half, toss them in olive oil, sprinkle them with salt and pepper and a little lime zest, and you bake them in the oven. So you're basically roasting them, and after about 20 minutes, you just kind of turn them and then go back, let them cook another 10 minutes or so, and then just before you serve them, you drizzle them with lime juice or with lemon juice from the lemon that you zested. And those are pretty good, and I had a craving for them. What is wrong with me? Well, of course, I've got this 3/4 of a bag of Brussels sprouts left over, and like, what am I going to do with these? Well, so I had this pulled pork for dinner and decided to make coleslaw out of Brussels sprouts. Genius. I never would have thought of that before, but just having these Brussels sprouts sitting in the fridge, thinking, well, how can I use them, just kind of popped in my head. So I chopped the Brussels sprouts really thin, and then just kind of, I guess, julienne them, although they're already kind of short. Basically trying to do matchstick style cutting out of them, so it would have like the pieces of cabbage that you would normally shred. So it kind of have that texture. And I just put in a spoonful of mayonnaise and a sprinkle of sugar and a little apple cider vinegar and stirred it, and it was amazing coleslaw. Amazing. Perfect for on top of the pulled pork because the pork was really spicy. And it was just like such a nice, cool, vinegary kick. Little creamy. But man, I am not terribly adventurous in the kitchen, and I impressed myself. But normally this is just a knitting and spinning podcast, so today is knitting, spinning, cats, and cooking. The fun never ends. I just realized I have one more thing I want to share you because I have talked about this before, and just would like everybody to see what I'm talking about. See if I can reach it without dropping it. I've talked before about one of my most treasured possessions. I would love to know what kind of tin this is. It's not that old Courier and Ives tin, but maybe some kind of old cookie tin. I don't know. This is Grandma's button tin. I love this. This is like one of my most treasured things. And there's all kinds. This thing has been through the mill. It's old, very old. And the cool thing about this is some of the buttons are still on their cards. These are Le Chic 49-cent buttons, guaranteed washable. Woo! In the color navy. I wish they put years on these. B. Blumenthal and Company Incorporated. George, get down. Get down. No close-ups. No close-ups. These are also Le Chic. Apparently one of those was needed. Guaranteed washable. You need them to be guaranteed washable. That's very important stuff. Dusty button tin. But my favorites are ones like this that came off of old coats. Before you get rid of an article of clothing that's old or worn out, you take all the buttons off of it. You save them because you're going to need more buttons. As you sew new clothes, you don't want to not have a button resource. So then when you get clothes and they come with a spare button, that goes in there as well. But when I was a little girl, I used to love sitting down and sorting through this button tin. And you just pick them all out and separate them and see how many of what color there are. And I remember when I was a kid, this button because it's pink and feminine and just a little girly, and that was one of my favorites. There's a few of those in here. And then there's obviously some 1960s influence. Bear Bear's coming over. He's curious about the sounds. I believe this came off of a coat at some point. Oh, rhinestones in there. And I mean, some of them are dinged up. I mean, these things are old. But when I need a button, I love having this as a resource. It is, like I said, it's just one of my favorite things. How vintage is that? Bear wants to sniff it. You need to sniff my button, Bear? Some pretty ones. So you just end up with all of these kind of crazy buttons. Some that you can't even find nowadays. Some that you look at and you're quite understanding of why you can't find them nowadays. Because some of them are, shall we say, not terribly attractive. Shirt buttons. But this is just one of my favorite things. And perhaps at some point I will pretend to be a little girl and I will sit down and go through this just to see how many of them match. And maybe while I'm uploading the podcast, ooh, here's a new brand. This is True Charm button. I mean, gosh, how long ago was it? Here's Les Chic Guaranteed Washables. More of them in a silver color. 29 cents. Crazy. You can't find buttons for this nowadays. Oh. These are Le Moderne. Genuine leather. 29 cents. Number 743, size 24, 5/8 inch. Made in Japan. The back. You see these? The back says an exquisite product. Good to know. And they are from the Schneider Block Incorporated, Inwood, New York, Toronto, founded in 1905. Be interesting to see if that company actually exists anymore. I mean, we still use buttons, right? So, but anyway, I could, strangely enough, talk about this button pin forever. I loved this one too. This one is furry. It is like a wool covered button, probably from somebody's winter coat. And I think, if I recall, there was only one of that kind in there. But just, it is a tin of happiness. Vintage happiness. And I'm so glad that I have this. It means a lot to me, and just the history and all of the things in here that my family have worn. There's a little clothespin button. But all of the things, there's so much history in here, and so much of my family's story. Just in this little tin. If these buttons could talk, I bet you there's a lot of stories they would tell. Anyway, so I know I've talked about it before, so I just kind of wanted to show you. This is Grandma's button tin. Just lovely and awesome and one of my favorite things. So, you can do that again without dropping. Don't drop the things you love. So, we are past Thanksgiving. Christmas knitting season is upon us. So I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I think that's all I have to say. That's okay, I said a lot. Have a wonderful week. Bye.